My name's Todd Dudley. I'm from the North East Bioregional Network, which is a community conservation group in North East Tasmania. And so I'm going to be talking about ecological restoration and its importance as from an ethical point of view, and also talking a little bit about our local project, but mainly more bigger picture, I guess, in a way. Probably some of the things I've got to say might be a bit controversial, but and I guess I'm reinforcing to some extent what Dean McDonald said this morning. I've been doing on-ground restoration work for about 35 years, and it's really just in the last about 10 or 15 years I've really been thinking more about the social and ethical aspects of it rather than just the practicalities of it, about how you get a good environmental outcome. Some of these writers that I'm putting up I'm just mentioning just because they're really worth reading too, because they go into a lot of depth about ecological restoration and its importance from an ethical and philosophical point of view as well as from a practical point of view. So, restoration can emerge as a paradigm for learning about the landscape and our relationship with it, as some of these other presenters have shown. So, just to clarify, when I talk about ecological restoration, I'm not talking about tree planting, I'm talking about trying to restore systems back to full range of flora and fauna species. And I guess from my perspective, there should be a lot more focus on doing that, and also on identifying areas with high ecological resilience and good landscape context so that you can actually get really high quality restoration at scale and for a lot cheaper. Again, I just mentioned these, Andrew Light and Joseph Sachs, as just two writers that are worth looking into if you're interested in looking more deeply into the ethical and philosophical side of restoration. So as we've mentioned before, there's a lot of benefits in restoration from a social point of view. So basically, the 3 points there. The first one's talking about building ecological ecological citizenship and responsibility for place. The second one is about developing ecological literacy, which is the more science kind of based part of it, I guess. And the third one is about ecological conscience, which is really important. I guess that's what I'm talking about a bit more today, is about actually developing through doing ecological restoration, actually people changing their attitudes towards the environment. On a specific note, our project at Skyline here, this is in North East Tasmania, we're restoring 2,000 hectares of radiata pine back to native vegetation. We're having quite a lot of success with that. I've just got a few quick before and after shots. So basically it's just harvesting mature pines and then doing ecological burns, and then mainly based on assisted natural regeneration. So it's we can do large scale reference standard restoration. So that's one example here. That's 7 years later after the fire. That one's about a year after it's been harvested and burnt, and that's 7 years later. So there's been no planting at all there, it's just all natural regeneration. So it's amazing how long the seed bank can last in the soil, and it's really important to not underestimate the resilience of native vegetation in a lot of cases where you would think it would be a write-off. Okay, so and this is the some of the team that we've had out on the project there. The main thing I just want to talk about quickly about this is that all of these people they're all from working class backgrounds, and with restoration a lot of it's fairly it's been quite focused, I guess, in more middle class kind of areas, but all of these people come from forestry, fishing or mining backgrounds. So having people like that and non-conservation backgrounds, so having them doing ecological restoration, it's changed their attitude to the environment. And we've consciously tried to structure our project around making sure that not only are we looking after the environment, but we're looking after them, because a lot of people who work in those type of industries do tend to get, they work long hours and they tend to get worn out pretty quickly. But we've really focused on trying to structure the work around the amount of hours and all the rest of it, so that they're actually really enjoying it and enthusiastic about it. And I don't think that's something that's really important. I think is to make sure that people are actually getting a really positive experience, so they'll go away and talk to their friends and have a really positive story to tell. And just two of the people in that, one of them was an ex-forestry worker who was an alcoholic, and now he's doesn't drink anymore and is, you know, really healthy. And there was an Aboriginal guy who had a community work order who set fire to 5 different places in St Helens, which is a nearby town, and now he's working as a ranger up in Cape York. So there's been some really interesting stories of people, radical improvements in mental and physical health over fairly short periods of time, and also fairly rapid changes in ethical attitudes as well to the environment, increased understanding of land management principles, and also, really importantly, from a rural community point of view, you know, in Tasmania there's quite a lot of, most rural communities are fairly polarised between pro or anti-conservation, so ecological restoration is the middle ground where you're actually doing something active in the environment but using outdoor practical skills that people in those areas have. So it's a win-win kind of situation where you're actually getting conservation gains but actually getting a whole lot of people from non-conservation backgrounds on site. Obviously we've got the lots of school kids and other people involved in the project, but I think the really important point with some of the work we've been doing is that we actually have created an economic base for restoration, but nowhere near significant enough or long-term enough. But it's great to have voluntary working bees and get the community and school children out there, but especially from a kid's point of view, it'd be ideal if we actually have a process where they can go from being interested when they're in school to be actually there being jobs in restoration, and that's still nowhere near enough opportunities for people to do that kind of work. Let's see, and then I guess the other side of the equation is that is through that process of getting more and more people from rural communities on side, then we have a change in attitude, and so you don't get so much hooning and dumping rubbish and shooting signs and all those kind of things that happen in lots of rural areas of Australia. So yeah, as Teen said this morning, ecological restoration, bush regeneration is only a really recent phenomenon in Australia, and obviously it was started by people who felt that they needed to become actively involved in looking after the environment, doing something about the fact that we're losing our biodiversity. So obviously a lot of us are motivated by life and beauty, but it can only go so far. And as Brendan Mackey said, he's a well-known ecologist, appeals to reason and morality are doomed to be ignored unless matched with supportive public policies, regulatory regimes and resources. So that's where we're at really. We've got lots of people who want to do the right thing and a lot of interest, but we haven't got enough money, and we've got a whole lot of different policies and laws that are actually in conflict with conservation. The term that we in Jordan use is ecocentric restoration where the main motivating factor is you're restoring species for their own sake, regardless of whether they're useful or not to people. There's a few things here I just thought I'd run through quickly that are potentially in conflict with that. Obviously, perpetual economic growth and population growth on a finite planet definitely is in conflict. I can understand the argument for using terms like ecosystem services and natural assets as a way of trying to convince politicians and economists that the environment matters, but I think life and beauty matters more. It's better to actually use language that isn't based on economics, because economics really, as it has been, is the problem rather than the solution. It's just my point of view. I think language does matter. Novel ecosystems, which is Teen didn't actually mention the word novel ecosystems, but I think she was more or less, that was the conflict between, I guess, the idea of looking at reference standard ecosystems as the main objective of ecological restoration, as opposed to quite a few people who are saying, well, it doesn't really matter. I think it does matter. And one of the reasons why I think it matters is because part of the value of doing high value bush regeneration and ecological restoration is that it actually generates a range of ethics and values and knowledge that you don't generate if you take a novel ecosystem approach, even though I don't really know what a novel ecosystem approach is. But and also, I think on the issue of cultural landscapes, which is something that Bill Gamage, for instance, has brought up recently, I think that it's important to not lose sight of the fact that while humans have influenced the environment in Australia, that really the dominant factor in creating and maintaining our landscapes is natural processes that have evolved over billions of years in Australia. Just to finish off, so I just want to make the case for quick ethical justification for why ecocentric restoration or ecological restoration is an important social and ecological principle. So basically what I'm saying with this first point is that, from my point of view anyway, is that the relationship between humans and the environment over millennia has really been one based on a utilitarian relationship where our main focus in our relationship with nature is useful species and using nature to generate resources for us. The idea of restoring ecosystems and species for their own sake and irrespective of their value to people as a resource is a relatively modern concept. And so what I'm saying is that ecological restoration can be a cultural counterpoint to utilitarianism and anthropocentrism, as well as an active and practical way of engendering an ecologically positive relationship between nature and people. And so following on from that, obviously the recurring theme is that we need resources and we need policies and laws that actually are consistent with conservation. So my second point is that we need long-term institutional, financial and legislative continuity. So if restoration is an activity that can achieve valuable nature conservation outcomes and engender associated ethics, knowledge and values, then it needs to be properly supported, including through adequate long-term funding, more broadly by a suite of policies and laws which have a consistent and holistic approach to nature conservation, and indeed care for our natural heritage as a core principle guiding our society's priorities. That's not much to ask, is it? And following on from that, so if ecological restoration is accepted as a critical nature conservation activity and it's properly supported by proper funding and complementary laws, and then it can become a unifying social principle in Australian society which can cultivate ecological literacy, citizenship, respect, affection, care and love for this continent's beautiful, unique and irreplaceable flora, fauna and landscapes. And then I just wanted to finally, just to finish off, read something from Michael Leunig. It says, while there's much to be sceptical or divided about in the nation and its history, there remains an abiding and deeper truth and beauty in the nature of the continent itself. The amazing landforms and astounding plants and creatures, and great and small, that constitute an extraordinary spirit of country. If there be a sound basis for an intelligent love of country in a globalising and environmentally degraded world, then respect and affection for the unique and precious natural state of Australia might be a unifying social principle and coherent way to hold and share and celebrate this day. Thanks.